Well, hello everybody, and welcome to this Thursday's MBE movie news. I had to think about that there. That's how busy a day it's been for me. Ridiculous. And as you can see, later than usual, as ever, when I'm doing solo shows. But look, I digress. I am John Christopher Walsh, as you will probably know if you've watched this channel before. And I'm back to discuss some hopefully very intriguing news from the world of movies and entertainment. But look, as you can see from that thumbnail and that headline, it's all about Marvel and Disney again. Who would have thought it? It's just not like I speak about this 20 times a week already, but look, I'm speaking about it again, and it's all about the delay to Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and how lots and lots of people have been suggesting this is the end of the world as we know it. Primarily Marvel fans, of course. But I'm here to discuss why this could indeed be a positive thing for the films, for the fans. And it's all being skewed from a Cinema Blend article. And they have been saying there you go, why Marvel delaying the movies might be the best possible news for the fans. And the general gist is, of course, that with this movie being, well, Black Widow being the movie which has just been delayed to next year, knocking all of the other movies out of their initial release slots, it being the first movie of the new wave of movies in the cinematic universe, they suggest, and I'll try and find the spot in the article because that's the type of person I am. I'm a very considerate person, but they suggest that there is a gap, and obviously the Infinity Saga moving into this new era, and it wouldn't have made, I can't find it, so you know what, I'm just going to ditch that article. It's crap anyway. I'll just speak about the points they touched upon and my own personal points as well. With that gap being a lot longer now, the biggest gap we've had in a Marvel cinematic stretch between movies, 22 months it's going to be if this hits its release slot in May, I think 7th next year. And I've got the releases in a separate article which I'll delve into in just a little while, but 22 months, that is the biggest gap we have seen between Marvel cinematic releases since it all began back in 2008. They're suggesting that that is a good thing, because it allows us to get used to the idea of moving into a new era of storytelling, a new era of characters, starting off with a character who's already died in the previous phase and who's been with us for the entirety of the last 11 years. But that aside, they're right. If it had just jumped straight from Spider-Man Far From Home straight into Black Widow, it would have felt like they were never away, and that it was just continuing on the same story. It was just part of the same ongoing saga, but it's not, with Thanos dying at the end of Endgame, and with our heroic Avengers, the ensemble, winning out and saving half of the universe from the snap, and just saving a way of life in general. That was the end of an era for these movies, and we're moving into a new era with new characters. Shang-Chi's popping up, the Eternals with the Deviants and all of that nonsense is going to be coming in shortly, and the best way to introduce that is via this scheduled gap in filming and in releasing. And they're right, I agree with that right off the bat. That is a definite positive for the fans. It gives them some breathing space. It allows us to settle into this new era, and when it comes back with Black Widow first and foremost, and even though it is a prequel story, we are getting Yelena, we're getting new characters who could have an influence moving forward. It will be all the better for the fans because they'll be able to enjoy even more. Absence makes the heart grow fonder is a famous saying, and it's never truer when speaking about the MCU in this unscheduled gap. The other reason they suggested it could be a big positive is for these obviously new slate of movies which are in different degrees of development. Shang-Chi and the Legends of the Ten Rings, I think currently still in production, still shooting, and with this chance for it to have an extra 5 months in its developmental sort of process, that can only be good for that movie. It can only be good for the director. He has some breathing room to make some changes creatively to the character, to the script, and it could make that movie a much more palatable, much more enjoyable movie as a direct consequence of said gap, said extra breathing space between now and its current, new release date. There's been so many release dates. So again, that's another positive. The other one, of course, is Eternals. They're suggesting in this Cinema Blend article that with this period of delay to its next release, hard to believe, incidentally, that movie was Eternals, that movie was supposed to be coming out in the 7th of November. this year. We were just a month and a half away from the original Eternals release date, and it's been delayed about 5 times now. But they rightly say, even for this movie, the delay could be a positive, because it could allow them to rejig some of the CGI, rejig some of the visuals, make it even more epic looking, even more slicker a presentation than before. And as they also rightfully say, and they absolutely bang on again in this article, you are in a perpetual rush. These filmmakers are in a perpetual rush to make these movies, get them out. It's a well-oiled machine that Kevin Feige and obviously Alan Horner, I want to say, or Horn, obviously whoever Bob Chapek I think it is, it's perhaps doing it now. What they have set up in this cinematic universe, continual avalanches of releases, 2-3 movies every year. It's a really well-oiled machine. These filmmakers don't have much slack to screw up the script, to make mistakes with shooting and stuff like that. It's quick turnaround, so they have to almost rush these movies from a script standpoint, almost rush these movies from a filming standpoint, and sometimes the quality could be affected by that rushing around like a headless chicken. I've not noticed it myself. I think the standard of the MCU movies, if anything, has been rising in a demonstrable way. We've seen them dabbling with different genres within the overall superhero comic book genre, and I've really enjoyed the way that it's expanded out, the way we've got different filmmakers in from different backgrounds, and the likes of Taika Waititi and stuff like that coming in, giving their own sort of energetic take on characters, sprucing up the likes of Thor. But they're right, with that rushing around, this little delay could give these filmmakers, the likes of Taika Waititi, who is working on Thor Love and Thunder, the script just now, a real chance to slow down and make sure they are creating the best possible vision for the Thor character, for the Jane character, for Valkyrie, for all of the sort of the domino effects that's going to have on this new phase of the MCU. They are right again that this is another positive for the filmmakers. It allows them to chill a little bit. They've not got Kevin Feige breathing down their neck every single moment of the day, rushing them to get the script done, rushing them to have the movie made. And Taika actually came out and he says that, and I'll bring the quote up in this article here. He actually says that very thing. He says, and look there, it's there. There are a few positive things I can take away from the COVID-19 crisis. One of them is that a lot of these films, and films in general, are rushed, or you don't have as much time as you would want to have on a script, and things like that. And he's right, as I did say, and that is another positive, that it's going to allow these actors and directors a little bit of breathing room. I was just reading about Chris Hemsworth fairly recently saying that he has been really enjoying the break, that's allowed him a chance to really settle into his own skin and have time away from that chaotic, strange place that is Hollywood, with all the sort of bickering and politics and inner machinations going on within it. And we've had other actors coming out. The Shang-Chi actor has come out, and I think it's Simu Liu, and he says he can't wait to be the hot girl of next summer. With, of course, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings set to release in a blockbuster summer slot next year. He's taking it in his stride, and he's quite happy about it. Kumail Nanjiani's also come out, and I'll try and bring that man's quote up. He's been speaking on Twitter, and he says there, Eternals delayed to November 5th, 2021, a whole year later than what it originally was supposed to come out in. Marvel made the right decision, the responsible decision, I should say. There's a pandemic. Nothing is more important than health and lives, and I can't tell people to go to a movie theatre until I feel safe going to one. Take care of yourselves, and I promise it'll be worth the wait, and I'm absolutely certain it will be worth the wait. And that's the underlying sort of thought process I have with this whole thing. Good things come to those who wait. Absence makes the heart Absence makes the heart grow fonder. There you go. Slow it down, and it all comes back to you, John. And that's ultimately what I'm taking from this. I think this delay is a positive thing, and I think that, as you can see, most of the actors, the filmmakers, are all working from the same sort of hymn sheet, and they're all on the side of Disney. And look, the only people who are going to sort of fall by the wayside through this decision and delaying all of these movies out of the original time slots or release slots is, of course, the exhibitors and the theatre chains. They are going to have a real existential battle. And over the course of the next 5, 6, 7 months, trying to see it through to next year. If they can make it through to 2021 though, I feel like all will be well with them, because we are going to have an absolutely stacked year in 2021. And look, I think this may be the actual article I was speaking about. It's the new release slate for the Phase 4 of the MCU, following the delay of Black Widow and, of course, of the other associated movies coming after that into their new release slots over the course of the next year. First up, we have WandaVision coming out, and it's set to come out late this year. So that's nice. It's going to let us have a first foray into the MCU in the medium of a Disney Plus TV show, and I'm really looking forward to it. It looks wacky, zany visuals going on, sort of weird Pleasantville shit, and just the consequences for the Scarlet Witch character. It's going to be very intriguing. And then after that, of course, we do have Black Widow, as I spoke about. It's coming out in May 7th. That feels to me like the correct release slot for this movie. It's getting delayed and delayed and delayed. I feel like this is a traditional early release for the MCU. You have really structured the ways in which these movies are released. We've seen Captain Marvel come out, and then it was obviously Endgame, and then we had Spider-Man Far From Home, and it's the same with this. Black Widow coming out, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, and then Eternals. It's just, it all fits well, so I feel like that's nice. And as I did say, Shang-Chi comes out in July. It's a big summer tentpole release. I'm sure Simu Liu will knock the ball out of the park with that one. Eternals, November 5th. Really looking forward to this movie. An absolutely stacked cast. Angelina Jolie, Penelope Cruz is in there. We've got the likes of Richard Madden, Kit Harington, Camille Nanjiani, as I did say. A whole new introduction to a new world, new characters. Big ensemble release. Going to be absolutely epic. Really looking forward to this one too. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki, What If, all coming out next year. It's going to be a big year for... You say a big year for Marvel Cinematic fans and just Marvel fans in general. Spider-Man Far From Home sequel could potentially come out December 2021. We could have 4 MCU movies next year, so good things certainly do come to those who wait. I'm not going to go as far afield as for Love and Thunder next year. 2 years from now, I should say. But we could see a situation where Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes back into a more natural time release slot, because it was of course supposed to start Phase 4 and it got pushed back because of the whole controversy over James Gunn and whatnot. So we could see a situation where it does have a more influential effect in the 4th phase of the MCU now, just because of this pandemic and the delays and yada yada yada. But look guys, I'm really excited for these Marvel movies, come what may, when they come out. I feel like this delay is a positive thing in the grander scheme of things, because for the company Disney, they will make their money now because they've delayed it into a hopefully more safe position next year when this coronavirus dies away a little bit more. Fans will be more inclined to go into theatres and watch these movies. It's going to be good for exhibitors and theatre owners who actually survive through to next year, if indeed they do. And then ultimately for the filmmakers, for the actors, for the movies themselves, it's going to be good for them to have the breathing space, perhaps make better, more endearing, richer scripts and movies for us fans. But look, I'm going to move on to Disney-related topic. And as you can see there, it looks like Mulan didn't make $200 million after all. And this is all relating into that article, which I actually headlined a show last week with. The suggestion that Mulan had made as much as $210, I think it was, $million off of VOD premium purchases on Disney Plus in the United States alone. And I says, but when I spoke about it last week, it was absolute bullshit. There's not a chance in hell that this movie had grossed anywhere near that figure via downloads on Disney Plus. It was pie in the sky nonsense. And maybe in a more worldwide scale it could have got something close to that, but even then, $200 million, VOD purchased £29, very, very unlikely. And now we have the chap who was responsible for these stats and these figures. I think he used an AI algorithm to calculate the percentage of people who subscribe to Disney and how much within that had actually purchased this movie, and he was coming up with pie in the sky figures. But he's come out, look, and as you can see on Twitter, he sort of clarified the position by saying, I wanted to briefly comment on our Mulan viewership data and Yahoo's revenue estimate. He essentially says that this was only over the course of the first 12 days of September. It wasn't for the entire subscription base or subscriber base in the United States. And he's went on to clarify down here with pie charts and everything else that in actual fact it's not as much as 29% of the subscriber base in the States who have purchased this movie, but closer to 10%, and with the effect that it's made closer to the $60 to $70 million mark through purchases. An average of $30 per purchase. It's in a sense grossed, as you can see there, between $62 and $93 million. And I feel like that's a more realistic total for this movie to have grossed via purchases. Even then, with the nefarious means in which you can get a hold of these things, you know for a fact, as soon as this hit Disney Plus, you'd have had someone ripped it straight off, probably in 4K, and you'd have had people downloading it and pirating it, and that's just the nature of the beast. Me personally, I did actually purchase it. I know Stephen, fellow movie burner, purchased it as well, and he's actually seen it. I've not actually got round to watching it yet. I'm that busy. I've been watching The Devil All the Time on Netflix and a couple of other intriguing little releases. I've not had a chance to watch the movie yet, but I have purchased it purely because, for the aforementioned reasons that when I spoke about this going on VOD, I wanted to reward Disney for the ballsy decision to send a theatrical release to VOD in these turbulent times, and it was a sort of experiment for what we're going to see moving forward. Different release strategies, big releases going straight to theatre, smaller releases going straight to VOD, in between releases which have slightly dodgy political leanings with the lead actors and stuff like that, which may eat into the profit, and theatrical releases going to VOD like Mulan. I wanted to support them. Looks like it's not paid off. And we actually had a comment on our video last night where someone suggested that this move to delay Mulan and all these other Disney releases into next year, Soul aside, I think, the Pixar movie, and perhaps Death of the Nile, was linked intrinsically to the underperforming nature of Mulan. In fact, it didn't make the kind of money it would have made in a theatre release. And I can't help but agree with that comment. I feel like they've absolutely looked into it. They've identified all of the analytics, the money they've made, money they've not made, and they've formed the conclusion that it's just not worthwhile releasing the likes of Black Widow on Disney Plus. It's not going to earn the money that even a mildly successful release in the theatres would do. And they've now made the decision to abandon this experiment and just move on to next year, hopefully, and earn the money, earn the spondulics. But look, not surprised. It's got middling success, and not even middling success, absolutely terrible success rate in China. It's way under par. It's earned half of Lion King hit stint in China, and it's a Chinese-centric story. But I think it's just because of the politics, filming locations, the political views of the lead actress, and just some of the marketing's been a little bit dodgy. People don't appreciate the musical elements been taken out and stuff like that. So not surprised that it's earned way less than $200 million, and not surprised that Disney have took the decision to ditch this idea of VOD releasing, at least for these kind of movies moving forward, and why they've delayed it. But look guys, I'm going to move on to the third topic on the show. It's all about Zack Snyder's Snyder Cut. Apparently it is going to be getting planned reshoots after all. I think he came out and says himself that this movie wasn't originally this mini-series set to hit HBO Max wasn't originally intended to have any reshoots. He had something ridiculous like 4 or 5 hours of footage which he had shot himself before he had to go because of the tragic loss of his daughter. Of course, Josh Whedon stepped in, and he says that we didn't need any additional footage, but it now looks like he is indeed going to be doing some planned reshoots as early as October this year, and he is getting the likes of perhaps Henry Cavill, Ben Affleck back in, Gal Gadot back in. We could have Ray Fisher, who he's already says is the heart and soul of his movie. Of course, Cyborg, a man who's got some legal issues with Warner Brothers just now, he could be coming back too, and it's going to be week-long reshoots. I think that suggests that it's just minor little fiddles he's doing to this story. He's not doing major reworking. I think he's got enough in the can already, and he seems, as you've seen from the actual trailers and from the general conversation about this project that he had during the DC fandom event, he seems to be firmly happy with what he has. He's delighted that this swelling of support on social media for this Snyder Cut has forced the hand of Warner Brothers in a sense. And he's delighted he's getting the opportunity to create his own version of this bastardised Whedon movie. And now that I see these planned reshoots coming in, I can't help but feel that this is now taking on more significance. This mini-series, which is set to hit HBO Max than it did before. I feel like this, absolutely is going to have some influence on the DCEU reboot moving forward. I feel like that and the Flash movie are absolutely going to be influential on where they are going in the DCEU post Justice League, of course, and all the other movies which they kind of try to disconnect from the DCEU for a short while. I feel like this could in some way become part of a sort of parallel universe which super exceeds the Joss Whedon version. I think we are going to have something happen with Flash that's going to connect to this, and they would not be putting $75 million into this, something like that. I think it was the budget, in conjunction with reshoots. Warner Brothers, that is, if they didn't feel like they had use for this story, his version, moving forward, they wouldn't just blow all that money, all of that time, using these actors' schedules, just to put it on HBO as a sort of thank you to fans. The fans probably were in the back of their mind, but they're not that important. It's ultimately about profits and paying into a greater strategy moving forward for these characters, for this universe. And I think it's really important. I think these reshoots are absolutely proving that he seems to have won over this new executive management, if you'd like, at Warner Bros., and they are going to take his vision instead of Whedon's moving forward. But look, I don't know if I've actually planned. I've planned a topic for this one as well before I move on to the blog rundown. And as you can see, my dog's shaking. You probably hear that. It's nearly knocking me out. You can settle down there, Harley. Thank you very much. Now he's doing his thumper routine. I'm trying to do a show here, Harley. Thank you. As you can see with the headline, James Gunn is already doing Suicide Squad spin-offs, and it's all about Peacemaker, this John Cena character. And look at this. I mean, it's just fantastic looking. We reacted to this trailer, the sort of roll call for these new array of characters popping up in this Suicide Squad movie. Dog's still scratching. He's absolutely killing me here. And yeah, he probably fell by the wayside, as the likes of the Weasel character played by his brother and stuff like that. He was one of the lesser characters I really noticed. Certainly wouldn't have been one which I would have picked out as having his own spin-off TV show. But when you have someone with the persona like John Cena has, and the sort of the charisma he has, it's an easy choice. My dog's killing me here. 2 seconds. I'm going to give him a little kindly hit there in the nose, just to let him know. He's still doing it. He doesn't listen to me. I have no authority in this room. But yeah, when you have the charisma of a John Cena, then it's certainly not surprising that they're going to utilise this man moving forward. Certainly the character looks very interesting. I've seen the behind the scenes shots of him wearing sort of Lacoste polo shirts tucked into shorts, and he looks utterly ridiculous. And look, I can't sit here and say I know much about the Peacekeeper character. I'm not someone who's devolved is the correct word I'm using, much time into these comic books and the actual Suicide Squad mythology, so I don't know much about him, but he's certainly excited, James Gunn that is, and I'm going to try and bring the man's quote up here if I can actually find it. I think it's there. It's a terrible alignment again on this website, incidentally. I think it's Empire. They kill me every time I use it. And he says, and hopefully I've got it up here, I'm excited. Peacemaker, if I can speak, as an opportunity to delve into current world issues through the lens of this superhero, supervillain, and world's biggest douchebag. I'm excited to expand the Suicide Squad and bring this character from the DC film universe to the full breadth of a series, and of course to be able to work again with John, Peter, and my friends at Warner Brothers as icing on the cake. I have said before that it has been a tremendous honour and an incredible opportunity to be part of the Suicide Squad and to work with James on what is going to be a fantastic movie. This is John Cena speaking, incidentally. I am unbelievably excited to have the chance to team up with him again for Peacemaker. We can't wait for the fans to see this. And look, I suppose the one thing that I'm taking from this, aside from John Cena getting to play this guy again, and he looks like a colourful guy, and I mean, I'll bring this up again, this little graphic here. I mean, look at that, that's fantastic. Just the fact you're getting profanity in there as well, it just sets the tone beautifully for this movie moving forward. But I suppose the one thing that I'm taking from this is that there's going to be a continuing working relationship between James Gunn and Warner Brothers moving forward. He isn't going to just do this, it's a one and done, and then go back to shooting primarily Marvel cinematic stuff. He is going to continue a working relationship, and that can only be a positive thing. The fact he's inviting Marvel or DC directors and filmmakers over to the set of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. He's sort of trying to create this fraternity between the two warring sort of tribalistic comic companies. That's a great thing, it's a positive thing. I can't wait to see him delving into a TV show on HBO Max. Again, it's just tremendously sad that we don't actually have the opportunity to subscribe to HBO Max over here in the United Kingdom. We have to give Rupert Murdoch money, and it pains my soul to give that shithead money, because he's just a right-wing, nefarious, you know what. I don't like the guy, I'm not a fan of him, so please HBO, cut all ties, Warner Brothers, cut all ties with Sky, please, and give us HBO Max so I can watch these things independent. But look, I'm excited for it. I'm excited to see Cena and what he brings to this movie, and what he's done in terms of performances to justify having his own spin-off TV show, because he must have been colourful and big on set to really get the likes of Gunn excited about the prospect of taking the world's biggest douchebag further afield into also a TV show. But look guys, I'm going to round up this section of the show by now moving into the next section of the show, and I'll hopefully bring up the correct graphic. It's the movieburnerentertainment.org/blog graphic, which is indicating that I'm going to go into a brief little summary of the last 3 movie reviews on our blog, on our website, which I didn't touch upon before. Just in a sense, throwing a bone to our fantastic writers over on the site. They do a great job. They write some brilliant reviews, and really urging people, if you're a fan of film and you like reading reviews which are unbiased, don't have ulterior motives or hidden agendas, to go all along to our website and give them a bash. And look, first review on the rundown tonight is, not even pressing the right graphic here, do bear with me, is, there you go, Robert the Bruce. It's coming in from DM Anderson. Now, I'm a Scotsman, and this guy's an absolute national hero, and I'm slightly embarrassed to say I haven't watched this movie. Although reading DM's, or Dave's review I should say, it becomes apparent that perhaps I'm not missing much. It's a very small budget release. Of course, Angus McFadden, fellow Glaswegian, actually back playing Robert the Bruce again. He played him in Braveheart. This is a sort of sequel to Braveheart with none of the emotional heartstring playing score and none of the big budget that went with that movie, in a sense. King of Scots, Robert the Bruce. And look, I'll move down to the bottom here and I'll get the summary from Dave on his thoughts of this movie. As for the overall story, I'd prefer the one based on what's revealed in the end title cards, which explains that Robert the Bruce went on to liberate Scotland and become a national hero. Yes, he did. He has a church with a huge big mural at the top of it. Robert the Bruce, I think it is something like Braveheart, Robert the Bruce. I've not seen it in a while, but he's got a big huge mural. He's a national hero. Went on to liberate Scotland and become a national hero, but I get it. The wallet ain't big enough for epic battles, so what we have is more like a transitional chapter. As such, it's sometimes interesting, though a little too long for its own good, and nearly bereft of any real action until the bloody final act. Still, for a budget-conscious spin-off most of us probably weren't asking for, Robert the Bruce isn't a cynical cash-in. It's a sincere effort to bring additional complexity and redemption to one of Braveheart's more pitiful characters. Despite being a little meandering, it's worth checking out if you keep your expectations in check. So he slagged it in a little bit earlier on in the review, where he says that there's a lot of, a lack of epicness compared to Braveheart, and just him meandering around. As he did say, there's not much action. He gets taken in by a family who are close to him. They recognise him. They sort of nurse him to health. Man, look, he was wronged. This guy was wronged. Angus McFadden, the character, was wronged too in Braveheart. He wasn't some flip-flopping arsewipe coward who was doing dodgy back deals with the English during the War of Independence. He certainly wasn't. He was a hero. He was a guy who was actually called Braveheart, not William Wallace, and he was actually the man who won independence for Scotland. So he was the most wronged cinematic character in the history of cinema, I have to tell you. Completely historically inaccurate, Braveheart. Great movie, thoroughly enjoy it, for wrong reasons, but historically inaccurate. And I'm glad that McFadden got a chance to play the character again and semi-redeem some of the wrongs which happened with him personally in that Braveheart movie. But look, moving on, second movie of the night, it's We Summon the Darkness, again coming in from DM Anderson. Sounds like an utterly crazy movie, this. Half an hour of, first half I should say, of the movie is just exposition and naming out 80s, I think he says, what is it he calls them? It's metal bands, I think. And then it just descends into absolute chaos in the second half of the movie. This sounds like the kind of movie that I'd be intrigued by. I love little B horror movies and things like that. No genre quite meshes better with the B movie sort of thing than horror. Action from the 80s and horror are just the best for little small budget releases like this, where you can work magic with characters and lesser actors and it just pops for one reason or another. But look, I digress. We Sum in the Darkness is more of a brutal black comedy than pure horror. While there's certainly enough tension and blood to keep the horror crowd happy, it's just as often quite funny, albeit morbidly so. And although some of the cast look a little too old to pass for young metalheads, the performances are pretty good. Part-time scream queen Alexandra Daddario appears to be having an especially good time, not only playing against type but engaging in some prime scenery chewing. Daddario's in this. She's a pretty big name in Hollywood. Good friends with Zac Efron and things like that, so that's quite a coup for a movie like this. So what was initially shaping up to be an interminable, I think that's how you say it, not a word I come across very often, have to admit, eye roller ends up being one of the more amusing new films I've reviewed lately. Similar in execution and tone to Your Next, it takes some patience to endure the first half, but football has 4 quarters for a reason. It's never too late for a comeback, and I love to hear that. I love to hear movies which start off a little quiet and then they just descend into madness and make it worth the while sticking with it. And look, I love these analogy, speaking about the Atlanta Falcons, and I think going 29, I can't recall the exact score. I'm a Patriots man, I can't recall it. But I love that. I love remembering that night. It was magnificent watching the Patriots complete the greatest Super Bowl comeback in the history of American football, in a sense, the NFL. I loved that, man. I loved that game, and I love seeing Matt Reeves crying like a little bitch after. It was truly momentous, and it sort of solidified Tom Brady as the absolute GOAT of quarterbacks. But look, I digress. Speaking about the Patriots, I could do that all night. Sadly, Tom's away to the Bucks. We've got Cam Newton now, but he's doing well, isn't he? So it's all good. It all works out well in the end. But look, I'm going to move on to the third review on the rundown tonight. The third and final review, that is. And it's The Banker. And this one has been reviewed by one Peter Plumbers, I'm going to go with. That's what I usually use. I'll stick to it. And as this, of course, was the Anthony Mackie, Samuel L. Jackson and Nicholas Hoult release. I remember hearing about this. It was on Apple TV Plus, though, by all accounts, so I couldn't get my hands on it. And certainly didn't see it in the theatres. I've not seen it as of yet. I refuse to give Apple £5 odds a month for an absolutely shit show of a service, by all accounts. UI is terrible, and I've not got enough alluring content yet, even though I want to see that Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston TV show about the sort of the bickering of these news anchors. I want to see that, but I'm not paying the money just yet. But yeah, by all accounts, this is a pretty decent movie, a pretty decent little uplifting story about two black people in the United States during the racial divide that was the 1950s, really struggling to make a name for themselves, trying to buy a bank in California, having to overcome racial intolerance and hatred and just racism in general, using almost the Nicholas Hoult's character as a middleman, a straw man, I think Peter calls him, to front and do all the deals so they could slide into owning their own bank. It sounds like a brilliantly uplifting story and a truly great cast, man. When you combine Samuel, he's doing golf lessons too. This is a guy that comes to Dunhill over here and does pro-am golf tournaments. He's a great golfer. When you combine him, I've made my own word up, with Anthony Mackie and Nicholas Hoult, you've got magic. It's three stupendously talented actors. But I digress. We'll get into the man's summary of the review. The Banker is based on true facts, and I believe it truly shows how it went in the US and how people were deprived of decent housing. And even now in California, they're still deprived of decent housing. The prices are ridiculous. The homeless rate in LA is off the charts. It's an epidemic in its own right. So it's still an ongoing issue 60 years later. But perhaps Bernard Garnett intended to act as a benefactor and pave the way for African Americans. Maybe he was doing it out of self-interest too, simply to prove himself and his father to himself and his father you could succeed if you firmly believe in it. Anyway, The Banker is a great movie with a serious part and a very entertaining part, but as I mentioned earlier, it's the cast that takes the whole thing to a higher level. A must see for sure. And look, that's what it says, man. You combine these three cracking actors together And a concept like this, it's just designed to be a success in a sense. It's a match made in heaven. I love the rags to riches story. I love this sort of American dream for the minority community who were always pissing against the wind, as we like to say here, in the 1950s. And I love the fact it's based on real events. So look, I digress. I will watch that at some point when I actually feel like it's finally time to give Apple even more money, because they get an ungodly amount of money off of me anyway, and actually go and subscribe to Apple TV Plus. But look guys, that's going to round up the blog rundown for tonight. Once again, I'd like to thank Peter Plowmers and DM Anderson for writing some magnificent reviews. And again, before I move on to the final two topics of the show, I will urge you, go along to movieburnerentertainment.org/blog if you want some great movie reviews. I even chimed in with a few myself from a couple of years ago, and I'm not such a bad writer either, so some self-promotion in a sense. Jump over there if you want to read some reviews. But look, I'm going to move on, guys, to the next topic. I don't know what I've done there. That's completely wrong. Macros are just ridiculous. There's too many. There you go. Next topic's all about Rian Johnson, and he has been speaking about the sequel to Knives Out 2. Apparently doesn't like to call it Knives Out 2. He's really rushing to try and get another title for this movie so he can stop hearing the name Knives Out 2, because it's not Knives Out. It's a different story following the exploits of Daniel Craig's Benoit Blanc character. And look, this is what the man's had to say about it. I'll try my very best to bring up this article and press the right macro. He's been saying, and look, and this is what he's been saying, been such a mindf, because I sat on the idea for the first 10 years, and with this one I'm starting with a blank page, and it's not really a Knives Out sequel. He's been on to say down here, and I'll try and find the quotes, I need to come up with a title for it so I can stop calling it the Knives Out sequel, because it's not because it's just Daniel Craig, I should say, as the same detective with a totally new cast. It's so cool that you created this character. Don't know who this Campos guy is, but he's been saying it, from such a deep love for these kind of movies, and that you can take him on other adventures. And look, this is something I always took from this movie, and the concept that he was going to be doing a sequel, a continuing adventure of Benoit Blanc, that it was a sort of cut-off of the old Agatha Christie stories from a bygone era, 1960s and 70s and stuff like that. The original Death on the Nile, Murder on the Orient Express, which of course have been given a new lick of paint, a new sheen, if you like, by Kenneth Branagh in recent years. The fact that we've had a renaissance of this murder mystery genre, I've always been a big Columbo fan, and a big fan of murder mysteries, whodunits. And when you have a new story from a guy like Rian Johnson that's coming out of his brain, it's not already on paper established, you know the twists and turns, then it's fresh. You're watching it and you genuinely don't know how it's going to play out. You align that with the type of cast that this guy put together, the likes of Lakeith Stanfield, Don Johnson, Chris Evans, Michael Shannon, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ana de Armas, who's a great actress too, and of course Benoit Blanc, played by Daniel Craig, a great southern accent incidentally. I suspect foul play. I can't do it. He certainly could. Another guy who can, incidentally, is Robert Pattinson in The Devil All the Time. What an accent that guy's got in that. What was it he says again? I can't even recall the word he says repeatedly, but it's fantastic anyway. I'll urge you to watch that as well. Delusions. That was the word. So I'm excited for this, man, and it was the one thing I always took, that he was sort of stepping into this renaissance and giving us his own distinct voice in the murder mystery genre. And he's a great filmmaker when he has his own stories, his own independent creations, and he's not the gorilla on his back of 30-40 years of mythology and expectations from a fandom in the Star Wars franchise, of course. Then it works. The man can create some brilliant stories. Brick was fantastic. Loved Looper. I really, really enjoyed Knives Out as well. And I'm supremely excited to see where he's going to take Benoit Blanc moving forward. How rich a cast can he bring back for the sequel? Because it's just something that you get in these movies. You almost need to have a ridiculously star-studded A-lister cast to make these movies almost worthwhile going to watch. I don't know what it is. Likes of Judi Dench popping up in these movies, and Johnny Depp and Daisy Ridley to a lesser extent. Can't really act. We've spoke about that before. But it's just something that's great and it's alluring. I can't wait to see the man's fresh take on it. If he can get over the writer's block and actually get over that blank page and give us a pretty damn good sequel. But look, I digress, guys. I'm going to move on to the final topic on tonight's show, and I'm going to try and get the graphic up. I've lost the plot here at how many topics I've actually got. It's 6. And it's all about Tom Hardy again. I spoke about this man the other day. Would he be a good fit for James Bond? And not that I have any sway in these things. It looks like the man is indeed an absolute cert to play the next James Bond. By all accounts, they were going to be announcing his casting as the next James Bond, following in the footsteps of Daniel Craig after the release of No Time to Die this year. But of course, with that now being potentially delayed, it certainly was delayed initially to later in the year, it's put back the announcing of the next James Bond. It's put back the potential announcement of Tom Hardy as the next James Bond. And with that, obviously, speculation's been absolutely rife. We've had the likes of Sam Heughan getting linked to it, Richard Madden, Henry Golding threw his name in the hat. Idris Elba's been floating around for about 10 years now. And we've had a whole array of different actors being linked to it, in a sense, and Tom came in pretty late. I think people were speaking about him for a while. I certainly wasn't in my sort of list of James Bond characters. I've said before, I think he's just too oversaturated. I love the guy as an actor, but he pops up everywhere now. He's like this generation's Sam Worthington. That makes no sense because Sam Worthington is this generation's Sam Worthington, but he's like this decade's just better Sam Worthington in the sense that he's in every single movie, pretty much every single year. And I just felt like, whilst he's a great actor, I just didn't think the fit was quite right for him to play James Bond. I would have preferred a Sam Heughan or a Richard Madden or to do an Idris Elba, because I want to see a black James Bond just for the shit show that it would create for all these backward racists out in society, the type who moan about Doctor Who being cast as a woman and stuff like that. I just wanted it because I'm like a sort of Heath Ledger Joker. I'm just an anarchist who wants to see the world burn. I have no rhyme nor reason for my wishes or my methods, but I just want to see anarchy and people screaming about the casting of a black man. So I want Idris Elba still. To this day I want him, but it looks like Tom has got it. Look, I digress. I'll bring up the article here very briefly. I don't know why, because there's no sway in what I'm going to be speaking about in the topic at all. But look, by all accounts, betting on the new James Bond has been suspended, and that's usually a pretty good indicator. He's the absolute out and out favourite. He's went from 61 odds to 1 to 1 on. He's attracting 54% of all bets in the last 24 hours. The speculation's grown to fever pitch. Looks like the man's going to be the next Bond, and look, what can I say? He's a fantastic actor. He can wear a suit very well. He's built a brick shit house. He can play the refined English gentleman. I was about to say he is a refined English gentleman, but he's more of a working class Londoner in a sense, which is almost closer to a Glaswegian Scotsman than it is to the refined English gentleman. But he can certainly do the accent, and he can do it well, and he's got the acting chops. And look, good luck to him if he is indeed the next Bond. I hope they don't reboot the entire thing. I hope that it's sort of a continuation of the Craig era. We keep the likes of Ben Whishaw, the likes of, I don't know who else is in it. Judi Dench is in it. I'm trying to think who else even now off the top of my head. Can't really think of anyone. But I hope they keep the continuation of it all moving forward. He's certainly in the same age group as Daniel Craig. He can certainly keep that wizened older Bond moving forward. Sort of stops it. Ralph Fiennes is in it as well. That's another one. It certainly stops us the notion of the whole Hollywood infatuation with reboots and stuff like that. So, look, good luck to Tom. Hopefully he knocks it out the park if he is indeed cast as the next Bond. It might pique my interest in the franchise. I'm not the biggest Bond fan, but I'm a big Tom Hardy fan. Slightly contradicting the whole oversaturation and him not being the perfect fit thing, but look, I contradict myself all the time, so look, I digress. We'll see what happens, man. I'm looking forward to it regardless who the next Bond is. I still hope it's Idris Elba. But look, it's going to round up the show, guys. I've not got much more to say on any of the topics. I'm done. Voice is starting to go. I'm slightly fearful I may have the Rona again. Pray for me. I hope I haven't. Hopefully it's just allergies. But look, I digress, man. What is your thoughts on the delaying of Phase 4 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Is it something you think is a positive or a negative? Do you think, like Cinema Blend and me, that it could be an overwhelmingly positive thing? The break in the last movie and the Phase 4 movie could offer some respite for fans and build the anticipation to a fever pitch. It could be a positive for filmmakers and the movies themselves. You can comment below and let me know what your thoughts are down below. What do you make about Disney's Mulan now having its earnings estimates marked down from $200 million to like $60 to $90 million. Is that something that surprises you, or is it right in the ballpark of what you would have expected this movie to make? What do you make about the Snyder Cut getting some reshoots? What's your thoughts on this Peacemaker TV show? The blog rundown, Rian Johnson with Knives Out 2, him getting some writer's block and saying it's an utter mindf. And finally, Tom Hardy looking to be the next James Bond. It looks like a cert for the man. You can comment below and let me know what your thoughts are down below in the comment section. You can also like the video if you've enjoyed it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this in the future. And if you do, guys, you'll see me back here tomorrow with Stephen for yet more movie news. You'll also see some reactions as well. We're doing some Indian reactions and other ones when they pop up, and some reviews in the near future after that. But look, until then, guys, bye bye.